Hello, welcome back. I'm Jeff Byers. I'm going to take you through how to add micro detail to an object or objects to see how they look, the differences. So we're going to create a couple surfaces here. One's going to be a sphere, one's going to be a plane, and one's going to be a cube shape. So we'll see how those all react to the same texture. So basically, micro details, what you see in an object, unless it's glass. Even glass has micro detail like scratches, smudges. Those are things that can be considered micro detail. The best example I can give you is be something like plastic. Some plastics are rough, so it's kind of nice to be able to recreate that type of surface. To be able to do that, we have to start with a surface that's like plastic. So glass would probably not be a good start. So let's go ahead and put the bottle in a layer. And just turn that off for now. Okay. Alright, so we'll put that in a layer. And what we're going to do is we already got the lighting set up in here, so let's go ahead and create a sphere. And let's go ahead and scale that up so we can see it a little bit better. And move it up. On micro detail, you have to get pretty close to the object to be able to see it. So let's go ahead and move that so it's on the floor. And the cube object we'll place next to it and move that up and scale that up to the right scale, close to what the cube is, and put that over here like that. Alright, so we give so we can have some different ways of seeing this texture now. I want to be able to see the light reflect off of these objects, so I'm going to move that cube over here a little bit like that. Alright, so we've got these objects. So you can play around with those. If you just want to use a sphere, we can, but we can place the same shader on multiple objects. I'll show you how to do that too as well. So we've got a plane right here. So let's go ahead and start. Let's go ahead and add an AI shader to this, add a new material, and we'll do standard surface shader on that one. We're going to use the same thing, so let's go ahead and set this surface shader. We're going to call this micro detail. Alright, texture, and we're going to apply the same texture to this one. So so basically, let's go in here and right click over it and go to assign existing material and basically micro detail texture. So assign that, and the floor, because that's a flat plane, we'll go ahead and use what we have. The floor we'll right click on it and do the same thing, assign existing material, micro detail. So now we have all the same texture. So let's go in here and go to the micro detail, and go to presets, and we want to click on plastic, replace. Okay. Now notice you're not going to be able to see it. Sometimes it doesn't refresh properly. So everything should have that plastic shader on now, or the blue. So let's take a look. We're going to go to the render settings and make sure Arnold Render is on, and we need to make sure that it's set at 3, 2, and let's go back to 2 on here. So 3, 2, all the way down. That's defaulted. Ray depth is defaulted at 10, 1, 1, 8, 0, 10. And on the comments tab, let's just make sure we're at HD 540, which is a lower resolution. Okay. So when we render this, if you click on this icon right here, we can render that object, or these objects. Okay, so there's our plastic surface. Cool. So that's fine, and you can change the color if you'd like, but I think blue is fine. Again, a gray would be nice. Okay, so now let's talk about micro detail and how to add micro detail to these objects. So because we only have to work on one, I'm going to go ahead and click on this object, which means that icon. I drop the image in here, it'll save that image. And so when I re-render, I can drop an image in there and we can kind of look at the differences. It's kind of nice. So I'm going to minimize that. And we will add a simple bump map. So we're going to go under geometry and we're going to go next to bump mapping and click on the option box for that. And under 2D textures, we are going to click on, I think I want to do just simple noise on here. So we got fractal and simple. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. And you can see we've got something already added to it. And we want to make sure this is use as bump. And we have bump value in here. We can go into the material or we can go out of the material. So if we're going to go into the material, or excuse me, that's out of the material, that's in the material. And so you can see the see what we have here for scale, amplitude, okay, threshold and ratio and octaves. So this is what it looks like. So what I'm going to do here is render what we have. Okay, the preview rarely shows what you really have, so let's go in here and render that out. So you can see that's way too large for micro detail. Okay, all right. It also depends on the scale of your object too as well. You can see these are scaled smaller than the plane, so it's going to react differently with the scale. Okay, so just keep that in mind when we're doing this. Okay, I'm going to pop that image in there, and now we're going to take the scale up to something like 20. And you can see it's changed in here, so let's go ahead and change it in here as well and render it out. A lot of this is just experimenting until you get to something that you really like. Okay, so amplitude is way too high for micro detail, so I'm going to bring that way down to something like 0.1, and let's take a look at it now. Right now it's too much. There we go. Now we're starting to see something that's more interesting. Okay, alright, so again, amplitude is too high. Again, I'm clicking on this icon to pop an image or save that image. Okay, and the reason why we don't see a scale change as much of a scale change in the floor or the ground plane, because it's a lot bigger. Okay, so if I click on that floor plane and scale it down, you can see that the scale of the amplitude of the object is also scaling down. So you can see that if I go ahead and re-render that it will render more precisely because of the scale and the size. So just keep that in mind as well. Right, so I'm going to pop that back up again. There we go. And I still think the surface is way too bumpy, so I'm going to go in here, back into simplex noise, and go to scale, and I'm going to do something like 100. Okay, and also the amplitude is too high, so I'm going to do 0.01 on amplitude. And so we should be getting something a little more accurate to micro detail something for plastic. Still too bumpy. This looks more like cement, which would be kind of cool. You know, cement is very rough. So let's go with an amplitude of 0.005. Okay, 0.005, and the scale of 200. Okay, now the ratio, that will also help. Now you're starting to get in kind of a almost like an eggshell type of feeling, and that's good. That's kind of what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and render that, and now we're going to kind of play with the ratio. It's really still kind of bumpy. Okay, but we're getting closer. Okay, all right. So ratio, we can play with that a little bit. Okay, and what that does is going to flatten that image out a little bit. It's not going to be so powerful. Okay, so if I bring the ratio, see how the difference is? It's really kind of what's a good word? Sharp. It's really sharpens that image, and the ratio at 0 really flattens that image out, and that's kind of what we're looking for. We don't want anything, well, it depends on what the material is, but plastic, we want to go ahead and flatten that out a little bit. So now we should get something a little more interesting, or closer to what plastic should look like. Okay, great. So you can see how it flattened it out a little bit. Okay, amplitude is quite a bit. It's still there. So let's bring the amplitude even down lower. Okay. But we're getting close. You get the idea. So the micro detail is really coming along here, and let's go ahead and flatten that out just a little bit more. Add that on there so you can see the difference between the two. Okay, so where we started. Okay, and then now we're kind of in this area here, which is looking really nice on the sphere. A little too much here yet, but I think you're getting the idea. So let's go ahead and bring the amplitude to 0.001. Okay. There's not much more we can go on the ratio. We could play around with the distortion. Okay. Or not distortion, but frequency. And that will give us a whole different look, though. So is that what we want? Probably not. We want to keep playing with that. So let's go ahead and see what we have now when we bring that down. Okay, so that's looking brilliant. I think that's looking great on the sphere. It's exactly what I'm looking for. So now it's really looking good. So yeah, I like that. Okay. So now we're seeing that subtle detail of the object, and that's looking really nice, and that gives you that kind of, and you don't even have to add a color map to it unless you want to, but that's a way of adding micro detail to objects. Now the floor is still kind of kind of large, so now we can go and see what we've got so far, where we started. Okay, that's where we started, and that's where we ended up. So you can see a huge difference there between this and that. Okay, so hopefully this helps you, and you can kind of play around with some of the other attributes and get the look that you're looking for. Okay, so that's what I ended up with. You can see with that scale, that's what I ended up with. And again, it has to do with the scale, because the floor is scaled up really large. You can see that, and we'd have to pull back quite a ways, like something like this, away from the camera to get the what it should look like. Now, it's funny how our eyes perceive things, right? So with the image so far away, even though the object has the micro detail on it, our eyes still perceive that detail, even if it's far away, because look how the specularity is broken up by that micro detail.